military. Yes, Hillary Clinton. She's got a higher rating than anybody. Out of sight, out of mind. People forget how ruthless she could be. People forget how that she's a Saul Alinskyite. People forget that she tried to come up with Hillary Care. Our population has a very short memory. So the Clintons have been reinventing themselves. Don't think that Barack Obama, I believe he cannot win a fair election. He only won by 7 million votes in 2008. That means 3.5 million people have to be switched. He's already down to 45% approval rating in the Jewish population, down from 85%. That almost in itself can turn the election. But he's losing independence. He's down to under 40% approval rating, and it's going to continue to go down because the economy is not going to get any better the way things are going. I, as a small businessman, see that. I see my futures down from 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I see that when I try to have my radio show and get sponsors. Producers of America are struggling. It's tough out there. People don't have jobs. People lose their jobs in their 50s and 60s. Who's going to hire them? The young coming out of college. The biggest scam going is the college educational system. When I went to school, it cost $1,900 a semester to go to an out-of-state school, U of L, and now it probably costs $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. Who can afford to go with $250,000, $300,000 in debt? It's a scam. The government now owns college students. Fannie and Freddie now own foreclosed properties. And who owns those entities? The United States federal government. We've allowed this to happen. Now we got to put a stop to it. We have to place conservative people who are trustworthy. And I know that's an oxymoron when you're talking about politicians, about being trustworthy. I hate to be so cynical. But think back to the debt ceiling situation. Let me explain, and this, nobody really explains this. Nobody in the Republican Party, maybe Rand Paul, has explained the stupidity of that whole debt ceiling fiasco. It was all kabuki theater. And as David Bego said earlier, whatever chaos is going on, keep an eye on what's going on behind the scenes via executive orders, via regulations that the media will not tell you about. In June, Barack Obama signed an executive order allowing 16% of rural communities to be under Agenda 21. Now, I don't have time to explain in detail what Agenda 21 is, so please get on your internet and research it. It's very important.
We've got CDs back here, Les.
Also, he also signed an executive order pretty much undermining Congress's not passing the DREAM Act last year, allowing the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, to not arrest anybody, to not deport people if they're caught. No, just leave them alone. Let them keep getting free benefits. This is a serious matter. So be careful what's happening now, because this Occupy the World here movement going around is nothing but more chaos. It comes right out of the Cloward Piven strategy and Saul Alinsky rules for radicals. Chaos, chaos, chaos. Because when there's chaos, that's when the people, the enemies of America, can take more control. Yuri Bezmenov, I've talked to you about this before. 4 stages of taking over America, hatched in the Soviet Union under Yuri Andropov. This Bezmenov said in 1985, for the first stage is demoralization, a 30 to 40 year type of thing where the American culture, the educational system, Hollywood, TV, every part of our country will be demoralized by a Marxist ideology without any constitutional or founding fathers ideology being enabled to answer that. So if you go to the universities, and I was a member of the university 40 years ago, and it was starting then, So now you have 3 generations lost to Marxist ideology. Then you have destabilization, which we've been going through for the last 4 or 5 years. And now we're entering chaos. And that's when it gets dangerous. Because if we cannot slip up. You know, it's not that some of the things that the people who are occupying New York have good points about. It's the people behind them who are manipulating them. Sure, everybody's upset with Wall Street, as we should be. But you have to be more upset with the government who allows Wall Street to go unpunished. Why isn't Hank Paulson facing a grand jury for the TARP? Why isn't Barack Obama facing impeachment proceedings for Solyndra and Fast and Furious, which is blowing up in his face right now? I read this morning that the Attorney General, Eric Holder, the most corrupt person ever to hold that office, has assigned a woman named Cynthia Schneider as the Inspector General to investigate the situation. Holder went before Congress in May and denied, he said, I just found out about what's happening with Fast and Furious a couple of weeks ago. When now there's proof in memos stating that he was proven to know this back in 2010. And who is the Inspector General? A woman who has worked with Eric Holder for almost 20 years. It's like having the fox in the hen house looking for the fox. It's not going to happen unless you and we the people get on a phone and start demanding Darrell Issa keep after it and get more aggressive and demand a special prosecutor to look into this corruption. Don't forget, we lost an agent who was killed by these weapons. We lost 2, in fact. This makes Watergate look like Peter Pan, and Watergate was nothing compared to this. And it ran Richard Nixon out, rightly so. So let's be consistent. But it's up to Americans to get this done. The media is not going to do it. But it's starting to gain some traction. Back to the debt ceiling. We're 14 trillion, approaching 15 trillion in debt. These clowns in Congress start thinking they're going to have a committee. I love it. They always need a committee. A search committee. They have to hire people, 20 people, 10 people, at a cost of a bunch of money to know what a 5-year-old knows. Don't spend more than you bring in. It's not that difficult. So they want to cut $2 trillion out of the debt in 10 years. That's $200 billion a year, and we just ran $1.4 trillion this year, $1.4 trillion last year, and $1.3 trillion another year. So if we go 10 more years like that, that debt will be $28 trillion. And folks, we're not getting there. The collapse of this country economically will happen sooner than later unless we demand that the government stop this pussyfooting around and get down to doing the right thing for this country. We have to dismantle. Now, solutions, people are always talking about solutions. What can we do? For one, take the 20, 30, 40,000 page IRS document and burn it. Throw it in the garbage. It doesn't work. All it does is make loopholes for the super rich. Warren Buffett he's complaining that his secretary, pays more taxes than he does. Well, then give her more money or write a check to the government and stop giving us the talking points for the far left to blame the evil rich and the creators of jobs. They say the job unemployment rate is 9.1%. Folks, I don't know how they do their figures, but every week you read or every month that there's 420,000 new people filing for unemployment insurance. But they only created 0 jobs last month. Remember? 0 jobs, 420,000 people more looking for filing for unemployment insurance. How does that compute to 9.1% when you added 420,000 more people to the unemployment rolls? I don't know who's doing the math, but obviously they've been educated in the public educational system for the last 30 years. Because adding simple addition is not something they do anymore. If you're a parent, you must start taking more interest in what your children are learning in public schools. It is your job to know what the curriculum is. And for 30 or 40 years, parents have not done that. They've just allowed the far left, the William Ayerses of the world, who dictate what the curriculum is. They've gone away from the reading, writing, and arithmetic to self-esteem and multiculturalism, and diversity, and being tolerant, when these people are the least tolerant people in the country. It's up to us, folks. You know, I'm getting old. I don't know how many more years I can keep at it, along with many, many others. You know, I guess the average age of this crowd probably is around 50 years old, 45, 50 years old. We need to get into schools. We need to get into churches. We need to get our message out to where it's not going to be co-opted and marginalized by some pundits or by some talking heads like, Larry O'Donnell or some clown like Ed Schultz. But that's who people watch. That's who people watch. Yuri Bezmenov said, people who are demoralized won't recognize the truth if it's given to them right with facts and documents, because they just won't recognize the truth. They don't want to. They don't believe it. And the mantra of this administration and the progressive left is, don't ever let the truth get in the way of moving the agenda forward. I love this country. I served in the military. I've been in business for 35 years. I have 4 grandchildren now, just a new one. That's where my wife is today, babysitting the grandchildren in Florida while our kids go to a wedding. I'm scared for them. Anybody who's got grandchildren and children, you have to be afraid for them. But just being afraid for them is not enough. Get to your teachers. Talk to your teachers. Demand to ask them what the heck they're teaching our kids. If we don't, we have nothing and nobody to blame but ourselves. You earn what's the old expression? You get what you earn in life. Freedom isn't free. Ronald Reagan was right when he says, freedom isn't passed through your bloodstream to your next generation. It has to be fought for, you have to be vigilant, and you have to continue to fight for American values and American exceptionalism. Talking about it isn't enough. Going out, motivating. That's why, pick up that movie, show it to liberals, show it to independents. Try and have a civil conversation. It may not be possible. But what choice do we have right now? The far left right now is trying to induce violence. That's what they do best. Go back to 1968. I said a year and a half ago that 2011 and 2012 will be the most tumultuous years in our lifetime since 1968. And I believe that's going to come true very soon. Because the executive orders and the regulations going after the internet are coming soon. And Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton, if either of them are win in 2012, the first thing they're going to do is come out with gun control. Trust me. Mark my words. I know these people. I know what their agenda is. Socialism is good for 2 things. Remember this. Economic disaster and dead bodies. 130 million people were killed in the 20th century because of socialism. National socialism. Communism. Call it whatever you want. It's tyranny. And I reject tyranny. I reject totalitarianism. I want America to be the land of the free, the home of the brave, and the best and greatest country in the history of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Les. Again, I told you that he wasn't going to cut any corners here, and he certainly didn't.